My name is Carol Hutchins. I'm a retired middle school science teacher from Knoxville, Tennessee, and I have spent 68 years being the kind of woman who wanted explanations for things. I used to tell my seventh graders that science was formalized curiosity, and that the universe rewards people who pay attention to it with genuine precision. I believed that for 40 years of teaching. And then in June of 2021, I was bitten by a timber rattlesnake in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and I died on a trail called Porter's Creek at 11:40 in the morning. What I traveled through before I came back has not made me less curious about the universe. It has made me considerably more curious and considerably less afraid. I grew up in Maryville, Tennessee, 15 miles south of Knoxville, close enough to the Smokies that they were simply the backdrop of my childhood. My father was a veterinarian. My mother was a bookkeeper who made every person she spoke to feel like the most interesting person she had met that week. I got my father's precision and my mother's warmth, and spent my entire teaching career trying to deploy both simultaneously, with mixed but generally improving results. I went to the University of Tennessee, majored in biology, and started at Walter Williams Middle School in 1978. I taught there for 39 years. I also designed an elective called Environmental Exploration that my principal approved, with the specific expression of a man who was fairly sure this was going to create problems, but had run out of reasons to say no. It did create some problems. It also produced, by my informal count, at least a dozen students who went into careers in science and conservation, which I consider an acceptable exchange. I was married to Gerald for 41 years. Gerald sold insurance, coached Little League for 2 decades, and made the best smoked ribs in Knox County. He died of a heart attack in March of 2020, 14 months before the snake bite. I arrived at Porter's Creek already carrying fresh grief, the kind that is no longer acute, but has settled into the structure of daily life, the way weather settles into an old house. I want to tell you about my faith because it matters to what happened. I was raised Baptist and had drifted, over decades of examining evidence, into believing in something larger while being honestly uncertain what that something was. I believed in the intelligence embedded in natural systems. I believed in the staggering improbability of consciousness. 40 years of watching living cells divide under a microscope made atheism harder to maintain than most atheists seem to find it. But I held my belief carefully, the way I held most things, willing to revise. What I received on Porter's Creek revised everything. Not away from belief, toward it and through it, and out the other side into something that the word belief no longer adequately describes. It is a Tuesday in June of 2021. I have been hiking the Smokies with increasing frequency as a form of grief management that is more honest than most alternatives. Gerald and I hiked these trails for 30 years together. Hiking them alone is lonelier in some ways and more attentive in others. Solitude makes you notice what company allowed you to pass over. Porter's Creek is a moderate trail in the Greenbrier area of the park. The wildflowers in June are a legitimate reason to be alive, and I say that now as someone who has since had additional data on the alternatives. I am approximately 2 miles in when I step off the trail to photograph what I believe is a yellow lady's slipper orchid near a mossy log. I am not careless. I am wearing appropriate footwear. I am watching where I step. The timber rattlesnake coiled in the leaf litter beside that log is simply doing what timber rattlesnakes do when threatened, defending itself. I understood that completely and bore it no ill will from the first moment I understood what had happened. The bite is on my right ankle above the boot line. I feel it before I see it. A combination of immediate, intense burning and the specific horror of understanding what is producing it. I see the snake in the same instant. 4 feet, heavy-bodied, the distinctive facial pit and rattle I had taught students to recognize for decades, and that had never previously been a matter of personal urgency. I do several things correctly. I back away slowly. I sit down on the trail rather than attempting to walk out, which would accelerate venom distribution. I call 911. What I do not do correctly is remain calm, because I am a science teacher who has taught the mechanism of crotalid envenomation to 7th graders, which means I know with precise detail what is currently happening in my right ankle and what is about to happen to my vascular system. This knowledge is not, in the immediate aftermath of being bitten, a source of comfort. The pain escalates faster than my professional knowledge had prepared me to experience from the inside. Within 10 minutes, it is moving up the leg with an intention I can feel progressing. A couple from Maryville, my hometown, named David and Ruth Garner, arrives from up the trail. They have a hiking first aid kit and the practical competence of people who have raised 4 children. Ruth holds my hand. David communicates with the dispatcher. I watch the swelling move past my knee, and I tell Ruth, with the honesty of a woman who has not misled students about data, this is significant. She says, I know. We are staying right here. The nausea arrives as a wave that takes the last of my composure with it. Somewhere in the chemistry of the venom and the shock response and the specific weight of being 68 and alone on a trail where Gerald will never walk again, somewhere in all of that, the light goes. Not dark. That is the first thing I want to say. Not dark. The light goes, and then there is more light, which is the fundamental disorientation of the first moment of a near-death experience. There was a tunnel. I want to describe it honestly, not the way tunnels are sometimes described in popular accounts of these experiences, which can make them sound like a special effect. The tunnel was not that. The tunnel was transitional. It was the architecture of moving from one state of being to another. What I was moving through was the gradual release of everything that had weight. The anxiety about the venom, the grief about Gerald, 41 years of accumulated concern for children and students and the natural world, releasing the way a hand releases something it has been holding when it finally understands that holding it was never the point. The light at the end of the tunnel did not arrive. I arrived at it. That distinction matters. It was not a destination I was approaching. It was a condition I was entering, the way you enter a warm room from a cold night. What I entered was not a place in any geographical sense. I am a science teacher. I do not use the word dimension lightly. But what I entered was a different dimension of reality, not a metaphor, but a literal different dimension, in which the ordinary categories of space and time were present as background concepts, without having authority over experience. I was somewhere. The somewhere was not addressable. It was real. The peace was total. What I want to say specifically as a science teacher is that the peace was not the absence of information. It was the presence of complete information. Every question I had ever had about consciousness, about purpose, about where Gerald was, about whether the intelligence I detected in living systems was personal or impersonal, resolved. Not answered in sequence, resolved simultaneously, the way a complex equation resolves when you finally understand the principle that organizes all its terms. There were beings. I want to describe them carefully. They were not performing welcome. They were not arranged decoratively. They were simply there the way people who have always been there are simply there, without ceremony, with the ease of the completely familiar. And I understood that familiar was the right word. I had known these presences before, in some sense that predated my June 2021 understanding of the word before. Gerald was there. I want to say that simply and let it stand. Not a memory of Gerald, not a construction that my hypoxic brain was generating to comfort itself. I have examined that possibility with the full rigor of my scientific training, and I find it insufficient. Gerald was there with the complete reality of himself, the specific humor and the specific warmth, and the specific way he had of giving someone his full attention. He was fully bright, more himself than he had been at the end, when the medication and fatigue had dimmed some of that brightness. He did not speak in words. What arrived was complete communication. Everything he had wanted to say in the 14 months since March of 2020, delivered without the limitation of language. What arrived was not a message so much as a restoration of the specific quality of being known by someone who has loved you through every version of yourself over 4 decades. He communicated one specific thing that I will share, because it is for everyone and not only for me. He communicated, "The love does not go somewhere else when we go. It stays with the people we leave it with. It is in them. They carry it. We do not take it with us because we do not need to. We are already in it, completely, and the people we love are already in it with us. The distance is temporary, the connection is not. Whoever you have loved who is no longer here, the love they had for you did not leave with them. It is still in you. You are carrying it. They know you are carrying it." I was returned through the tunnel, familiar now, the way a road you have traveled becomes familiar, with the understanding that the return was a continuation rather than an interruption, that the life on the other side had unfinished threads worth finishing. Brian, my son, came clearly. He had taken Gerald's death harder than he had shown anyone, including himself, and needed something from me that I had not yet found the right way to give. And Melissa, my daughter, who was 3 months pregnant with her first child, a pregnancy she had not told me about yet because she was waiting for the 12-week mark. I did not know about the pregnancy when I went into the tunnel. I knew about it when I came out. I am a science teacher. I understand the epistemological implications of that statement. I knew. Before Melissa told me. Before anyone told me, I knew there was a child coming, and I knew it was a girl, and I knew her name was going to start with a G. Her name is Grace. She was born in January of 2022. She has Gerald's eyes and Melissa's stubbornness and a laugh that sounds surprised by itself every time it happens. I came back on the trail with Ruth Garner's hand in mine and David's voice saying, "She is breathing. She is breathing," and the June air of the Smokies arriving in my lungs with the complexity of a world that was still here. The pain returned immediately and completely, which is the body's way of confirming you are back in it, a confirmation that is convincing if not entirely welcome. I received 8 vials of Crofab anti-venom at the University of Tennessee Medical Center over 24 hours. My treating physician told Brian and Melissa that my vital signs had been absent for an estimated 4 to 6 minutes before Ruth observed the first sign of spontaneous return. I spent 6 days at UT Medical Center. The scar covering most of my right ankle I have named Gerald. My wound care nurse found this either touching or peculiar and was too professional to specify which. I told Brian about Gerald on day 2. Not everything. The full account took several conversations. But I told him what Gerald had communicated, about the love not going somewhere else. Brian, who is an environmental engineer and his mother's son in his relationship with evidence, sat with that for a long time. Then he said, "Mom, do you know how much I needed to hear that?" I said, "I think I do. I think that may be part of why I am still here." Melissa told me about the pregnancy on day 4. She said something felt wrong about waiting any longer. I told her I already knew. She looked at me with the expression of a woman who has a science teacher for a mother and has just received information that does not fit the science teacher framework. Then she said, "Of course you do." And then we both cried. I have been back to Porter's Creek twice since the snake bite, both times in June when the lady's slippers are blooming. I walk that trail with a quality of attention that comes from knowing it was almost the last thing I saw, which turns out to be the correct quality of attention for a trail that beautiful. Here is what I want to leave with you, from a science teacher who traveled through a tunnel of light on a Tuesday in the Smoky Mountains. The tunnel is real. The light is real. The peace inside the light is more real than anything I taught in 40 years of science classes. The people you have loved and lost are not gone. They are in a place that your love reaches, because love is not a feeling that exists inside a body and ends when the body ends. Love is structural. It is woven into what exists. Gerald is in the light. Your person is in the light. And the love they had for you did not go with them. It stayed in you. It is in you right now. It is the warmth you feel when you remember them accurately. They know you are carrying it. We are going to travel through the tunnel, all of us, and what is waiting on the other side is not darkness, and it is not ending. It is light. It is the complete resolution of every question that ever kept you awake at 3 in the morning. It is everyone you ever loved, fully themselves, existing outside of time, and knowing with complete certainty that you are on your way. We are going home through the light, and the light, I can tell you from the inside, knows your name, and it is warm, and it has been waiting for you with something I can only call joy.